My beloved, stay till the end, something huge is waiting for you. Pause. Let the noise fade for a moment. Because the reason you are here is not random. You didn't open this just to be entertained. You opened this because something inside you has been quietly alert for a while. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just aware. You felt a shift that didn't have a clear explanation. A subtle change in the way certain people interact around you. Two people close to you. People whose presence once felt natural. Familiar. Predictable. And over time, something changed. Conversations became shorter. Reactions felt delayed. There were moments when you sensed distance without any obvious reason. And you tried to stay calm. You told yourself not to assume. You reminded yourself that everyone has their own life. Their own stress. Their own distractions. You chose maturity. You chose peace. But intuition doesn't disappear just because we ignore it. It stays. Quietly. Patiently. Waiting to be acknowledged. And it kept nudging you. Something is not being said. Something is being shared without you. And that realization didn't come with anger. It came with confusion. You wondered if you were being too sensitive. You replayed interactions in your mind. Not to accuse, but to understand. You asked yourself what changed. What moment shifted things? And the hardest part was not knowing. Because uncertainty creates more weight than truth. You continued to show up as yourself. Respectful. Present. Consistent. You didn't confront. You didn't withdraw. You stayed grounded. Even when part of you felt slightly off balance. And that says a lot about who you are. This moment is not here to accuse anyone. It's here to bring clarity. When we talk about things being revealed, it doesn't always mean dramatic exposure. It doesn't always mean evidence in your hands. Sometimes it means awareness rising. Patterns becoming visible. Emotional dots connecting quietly. You start to see how small actions aligned. How certain reactions made sense in hindsight. Two people close to you were navigating something of their own. Their own thoughts. Their own emotional needs. Their own conversations that didn't involve you. Not to hurt you. Not to betray you. But because they were dealing with something internal. And you felt the ripple before you saw the cause. That's not weakness. That's perception. And on the 13th, something within you settles. Not because someone confesses. Not because messages surface. But because your understanding becomes complete. You stop guessing. You stop questioning yourself. You stop wondering if you imagined it. You realize your intuition was simply informing you. Not warning you. Just guiding you toward clarity. And that clarity feels calm. Not explosive. Not overwhelming. Calm. You recognize that what happened was not a reflection of your worth. It was a reflection of where others were emotionally. And you release the urge to personalize it. You release the habit of carrying responsibility for dynamics you didn't create. You understand that distance doesn't always mean rejection. Sometimes it means redirection. Sometimes it means growth happening on separate paths. And as this realization settles, you feel lighter. Because confusion leaves when truth arrives. You don't feel the need to confront. You don't feel the urge to explain yourself. You don't feel the pull to demand answers. Because you already have what you need. Understanding. And understanding restores your balance. You begin to focus back on yourself. On what feels steady. On what feels reciprocal. On relationships where energy flows both ways. You become more selective with where you invest emotionally. Not out of fear, but out of self-respect. You learn that peace is not passive. It's intentional. And you've been practicing it longer than you realized. This moment is not an ending. It's a recalibration. A gentle one. It aligns you with clarity instead of doubt. With self-trust instead of overthinking. With acceptance instead of resistance. And as you move forward, you'll notice something powerful. You no longer feel the need to read between lines. You no longer feel tension in silence. You no longer feel responsible for maintaining balance in situations that aren't mutual. That freedom is quiet. But it's real. And it stays with you. If this message feels like it's speaking directly to what you've been carrying, take a moment to like this video. It helps this kind of calm clarity reach others who need it. Comment Amen if you're choosing understanding over overthinking. Subscribe if you want more messages that bring truth without chaos. And share this with someone who needs reassurance rather than noise. Because not every revelation is meant to shake you. Some are meant to steady you. And as you stay here, listening, something else begins to happen. A deeper layer opens inside you. Because once clarity arrives, it doesn't stop at explanation. It starts changing how you see yourself. You begin to notice how much emotional weight you were quietly carrying. How often you adjusted your behavior to keep things smooth. How many times you stayed silent to avoid misunderstanding. You thought that was just being kind. And it was. But now you see it clearly. You were also protecting others from discomfort at the cost of your own certainty. And that awareness doesn't make you angry. It makes you honest with yourself. You realize you don't have to overextend to be valued. You don't have to stay confused to keep peace. Peace that requires you to doubt yourself is not peace at all. And that realization settles gently. Like a truth you were ready for. You start remembering moments you brushed aside. Small signals. Slight hesitations. Pauses that didn't exist before. And instead of replaying them with regret, you acknowledge them with understanding. Because you did the best you could with the information you had. And now you have more. And more information doesn't mean more burden. It means more choice. You can choose how close you want to be. How much energy you want to invest. how much access others have to your inner world. This is not about building walls. It's about choosing doors. Doors you open intentionally. And as you sit with this awareness, you notice how your body responds. Less tension in your shoulders. Less tightness in your chest. Because when the mind stops guessing, the body relaxes. You don't need confirmation from anyone else. You don't need validation to move forward. You already know what felt off. And now you know why. That knowledge becomes grounding. It steadies you. You feel more present in your own life. Less distracted by what others might be thinking or saying. You realize that your time is valuable. Your emotional energy is valuable. And not everyone deserves full access to it. This isn't bitterness. It's discernment. And discernment is a form of self-respect. You begin to feel a quiet confidence returning. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself. The kind that shows up as calm responses. Clear boundaries. Gentle distance when needed. You don't need to change who you are. You don't need to harden. You simply become clearer. And clarity changes everything. You start attracting interactions that feel lighter. Conversations that don't require decoding. People who say what they mean. People who don't leave you wondering where you stand. And you realize something important. The moment you stopped questioning yourself, life started meeting you with more honesty. That's how alignment works. And if you're still here, still listening, that means this message is touching something real inside you. So take a moment right now. Gently. Like the video. Not out of obligation, but as a quiet acknowledgement that you're choosing awareness. Comment Amen if you're ready to release confusion and stand in clarity. Subscribe if you want to keep receiving messages that calm the mind and steady the heart. And share this with someone who might be silently carrying the same uncertainty. Because clarity shared multiplies peace. And as we continue, I want you to notice something else. The future doesn't feel heavy anymore. It feels open. Because you're no longer walking forward with unanswered questions pulling you back. You're walking with understanding beside you. And that makes every next step lighter. You don't need to rush. You don't need to force distance. You simply move at your own pace. With your eyes open. With your heart intact. You allow relationships to reveal themselves naturally. Without chasing. Without clinging. Without suspicion. You trust your intuition again. And this time, you listen to it without doubting. Because intuition isn't meant to control you. It's meant to guide you. And it guided you here. To this moment. To this pause. To this clarity. And as this clarity settles deeper, you may notice gratitude arising. Not for what happened, but for what you learned. For the strength you developed. For the self-trust you regained. Because sometimes the greatest growth doesn't come from joy. It comes from understanding something that once confused you. And now, You're no longer confused. You're steady. You're present. You're clear. And that clarity stays with you long after this video ends. And you're still here. Which means something inside you is listening closely. Not because you're searching for drama, but because you're searching for peace that finally makes sense. As this clarity continues to unfold, you begin to notice how different your thoughts feel now compared to before. There is less urgency, less mental noise, fewer unanswered questions looping in your mind. Because once you understand what was happening beneath the surface, your mind no longer needs to create stories to fill the gaps. You realize how much energy was being spent on quiet wondering, on subtle checking, on emotional self-monitoring. And now that energy comes back to you. You feel it as presence, as calm focus, as the ability to enjoy moments without second-guessing them. You notice how your reactions soften, how you no longer feel triggered by small shifts in tone or behavior. Because you're no longer searching for hidden meaning. You already understand the context. And understanding removes fear. It removes tension. It replaces suspicion with neutrality. You don't need to label anyone as good or bad. You don't need to rewrite history. You simply see things as they are. Human. Imperfect. Temporary. And that perspective gives you emotional freedom. You start choosing responses instead of reacting. You pause more. You speak more intentionally. You listen without absorbing unnecessary weight. And that's growth. Real growth doesn't announce itself loudly. It shows up as steadiness, as emotional regulation, as the ability to stay grounded even when others are uncertain. You recognize how far you've come, how you didn't collapse under confusion, how you didn't lash out, how you didn't lose yourself trying to hold everything together. You stayed you. And that matters. Because not everyone can do that. As you move forward, you begin to feel more aligned with your own values. You give attention to what nourishes you. You spend time with people who feel consistent. You invest in spaces where you don't have to explain your presence. You stop chasing reassurance. Because clarity has already given you what reassurance never could. And here's something important. This moment doesn't harden you. It refines you. It teaches you discernment without closing your heart. It teaches you awareness without paranoia. It teaches you strength without rigidity. You learn that it's okay to love people while also seeing their limitations. It's okay to care without carrying responsibility for their choices. It's okay to step back without resentment. That balance is rare. And you're learning it now. Slowly. Naturally. You may even notice that your intuition feels sharper. Not anxious. Just clear. Because intuition thrives when the mind is calm. And now your mind is calm. You trust your perceptions without obsessing over them. You allow information to pass through you without sticking. You feel more in control of your emotional world. And that sense of control doesn't come from dominance. It comes from self-awareness. You know where you stand. You know what you feel. You know what you're willing to accept. And what you're not. That clarity becomes your anchor. And anchors don't move easily. They keep you steady even when currents shift around you. You start seeing the future differently. Not as something unpredictable, but as something you can navigate with confidence. Because you've already proven to yourself that you can handle uncertainty without losing balance. You can sit with discomfort until understanding arrives. You don't need immediate answers. You trust timing. You trust your ability to adapt. You trust yourself. And that trust changes everything. It influences how you show up at work. How you show up in conversations. How you show up in relationships. You're less reactive. More intentional. Less drained. More focused. People may even notice it. They may not say it. But they feel it. Calm is contagious. Clarity is magnetic. And as you embody it, your environment begins to respond. Interactions become simpler. Boundaries become easier to maintain. You don't have to justify your choices. You don't have to explain your distance or closeness. You simply act in alignment with what feels right. And that alignment feels peaceful. If you're still listening right now, take a quiet moment. Like the video. It supports content that values clarity over chaos. Comment Amen if you're choosing calm understanding over emotional exhaustion. Subscribe if you want more messages that help you stay grounded and aware. And share this with someone who might be carrying confusion in silence. Because sometimes hearing that they're not alone is enough to bring relief. And as this message continues to settle within you, know this. You didn't miss anything you were meant to have. You weren't excluded from something that defined your worth. You were simply guided toward a deeper understanding of yourself. And that understanding is something no one can take from you. It becomes part of how you move through the world. Calm. Clear. Steady. And that steadiness will carry you far. Long after this moment. Long after this video. Long after the questions fade. And as you remain here, fully present, something deeper continues to unfold inside you. Because clarity is not a single moment. It's a process. A gentle unfolding that keeps revealing new layers of understanding. You start noticing how your inner dialogue has changed. How the questions that once repeated endlessly have begun to lose their grip. You are no longer asking yourself what you missed. Or what you should have done differently. Those thoughts no longer feel urgent. They feel distant. Like echoes fading in a quiet room. You realize how much strength it took to sit with uncertainty without becoming bitter. How much emotional discipline it required to remain kind while not fully understanding what was happening around you. That strength didn't come from trying harder. It came from trusting yourself enough to wait. And now, waiting has paid off. Because understanding has arrived in a way that doesn't destabilize you. It stabilizes you. You feel more grounded in who you are. more secure in how you move through relationships. You no longer feel the need to explain yourself constantly. You no longer feel the pressure to fill silences or smooth over moments that feel uncomfortable. You allow things to be what they are. And that allowance brings peace. You begin to recognize how often you once put others' comfort before your own clarity. Not because you were weak, but because you were empathetic. And empathy is powerful. But now it's balanced with self-respect. You no longer abandon your inner knowing to maintain harmony. You understand that real harmony includes you. And that realization changes how you show up. You speak more honestly. Not harshly. Not defensively. Just clearly. You listen without absorbing emotional residue that doesn't belong to you. You walk away from conversations feeling neutral instead of drained. That's a sign of growth. You also start to notice how your body responds differently now. Less tension. Less tightness. Less unease. Because the body reacts to confusion before the mind does. And now that confusion has eased, your body follows. You breathe deeper. You sleep better. You feel more present in simple moments. Small joys return. Moments of quiet appreciation. A sense of calm that doesn't depend on external validation. And this calm isn't passive. It's intentional. It comes from choosing awareness over avoidance. You realize that not everything needs to be resolved through confrontation. Some things resolve themselves through understanding. Through acceptance. Through inner alignment. And you are aligning now. With your values. With your boundaries. With your sense of self. You stop chasing explanations that don't change the outcome. You stop replaying scenarios that no longer serve you. Instead, you invest your energy where it feels returned. Where it feels mutual. Where it feels steady. And that choice feels empowering. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to justify it. You simply live it. And as you do, you notice something else. Your standards rise. Not in a demanding way, but in a self-aware way. You recognize what feels respectful to you. What feels honest. What feels aligned. And you honor that. You no longer settle for ambiguity that costs you peace. You no longer tolerate emotional imbalance out of habit. You allow relationships to reveal themselves naturally. Without forcing closeness. Without forcing distance. You trust that what's meant to stay will stay in a way that feels clear. And what's meant to change will change without chaos. This trust doesn't make you naive. It makes you discerning. And discernment is a quiet strength. It keeps you from overreacting. It keeps you from underestimating yourself. It allows you to move forward with confidence. Even when circumstances shift. You start seeing the future not as something uncertain, but as something you can navigate with clarity. Because you've already navigated confusion without losing yourself. You've already proven your resilience. And that knowledge becomes part of you. It becomes a steady presence that supports you in moments of doubt. You don't rush decisions anymore. You pause. You reflect. You respond when it feels right. And that patience serves you well. People may notice that you seem calmer, more centered, more assured. And that's because you are. Calm doesn't come from having all the answers. It comes from trusting your ability to handle whatever comes next. And you trust yourself now. Fully. If this message is still holding your attention, if you feel a sense of recognition in these words, take a quiet moment. Like the video. It helps content like this reach others who need reassurance rather than noise. Comment Amen if you're choosing clarity over confusion. Subscribe if you want to continue receiving messages that ground you instead of overwhelming you. And share this with someone who might be silently questioning themselves. Because sometimes hearing that they're not alone is enough to bring relief. And as this message gently comes to a close, remember this. You didn't lose anything by staying calm. You gained understanding. You gained self-trust. You gained peace. And those are things no situation can take away from you. They stay. They guide you. They support you. Long after this moment ends. And you're still listening. Which means this message is moving at the same pace your heart needs right now. Slowly. Clearly. Without pressure. And that matters. Because when something finally makes sense, the mind doesn't rush forward. It pauses. It settles. It integrates. You begin to notice that you're no longer replaying the past the way you once did. Those moments that used to loop in your head now feel complete. Closed. Not because they were explained out loud, but because you understand them internally. And internal understanding is more powerful than any conversation. You stop needing closure from people who were never meant to give it. You give it to yourself. And that shift changes everything. You feel more rooted in your own perspective. More confident in your emotional intelligence. You recognize that you didn't misread the situation. You simply respected it long enough for it to reveal itself. That patience was not weakness. It was wisdom forming quietly. You see now how life sometimes protects you by withholding clarity until you're strong enough to receive it without pain. And you are strong enough now. Strong enough to see things as they are without collapsing. Strong enough to acknowledge distance without turning it into rejection. Strong enough to move forward without carrying bitterness. You notice how your emotional reactions have softened. Not because you care less, but because you understand more. Understanding reduces intensity. It replaces urgency with calm. And calm allows you to think clearly. To choose wisely. To respond intentionally. You don't feel the need to monitor others anymore. You don't feel pulled to check for signs. Because your focus has returned to where it belongs. Inside you. On your growth. On your peace. On your direction. You realize that clarity doesn't always change the people around you. It changes how much power they have over your inner world. And you're reclaiming that power now. Gently. Naturally. Without force. You begin to trust the rhythm of your own life again. You stop comparing timelines. Stop wondering if you fell behind. Stop questioning if you missed something important. You didn't miss anything meant for you. You were exactly where you needed to be to learn what you needed to learn. And now you're carrying that lesson forward. Not as weight, but as awareness. You feel more present in conversations. More attentive without being hypervigilant. More open without being exposed. That balance feels good. It feels sustainable. You start enjoying your own company more. Quiet moments don't feel empty anymore. They feel peaceful. Because your mind isn't cluttered with unanswered questions. Silence no longer triggers overthinking. It feels like rest. And rest is healing. You begin to approach relationships with a new lens. One that values consistency over intensity. Honesty over explanation. Presence over performance. You don't chase connection anymore. You allow it to unfold. And when it does, it feels lighter. More genuine. Less complicated. You recognize that the right connections don't require you to shrink or second-guess yourself. They meet you where you are. And that realization sets a new standard for your life. You hold yourself to it quietly. Without announcements. Without ultimatums. You simply live in alignment with it. And alignment has a way of reshaping everything around you. Opportunities feel clearer. Decisions feel easier. Your energy feels steadier. You don't wake up with that familiar tension anymore. That sense that something is unresolved. Because resolution has already happened internally. And internal resolution lasts. You may still think about the past sometimes. But it no longer grips you. It doesn't demand answers. It simply exists as part of your story. Integrated. Understood. Released. And as you continue forward, you feel a growing sense of self-respect. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind. The kind that shows up as boundaries you don't explain. As standards you don't negotiate. As peace you don't sacrifice. You realize that emotional clarity is one of the greatest forms of freedom. It allows you to move without fear. To connect without losing yourself. To let go without resentment. And you are living that freedom now. If you're still here. Still present. Take a gentle moment to like this video. It supports content that values understanding over chaos. Comment Amen if you're choosing clarity. Subscribe if you want more messages that ground you instead of overwhelming you. And share this with someone who might need reassurance more than answers. Because sometimes peace begins with knowing you were never wrong for trusting yourself. And as this message settles into you, carry this forward. You are not confused anymore. You are clear. You are steady. You are aware. And that awareness will guide you well. Wherever you go next. And now, This is the final place this message needs to take you. Not forward in time, but inward. Because everything you've heard until now was not meant to keep you thinking. It was meant to help you arrive. Arrive at a quiet understanding that doesn't need more words. You may notice that nothing feels unresolved anymore. Not because everything was fixed, but because you no longer feel the need to fix it. That urge has softened. The constant mental checking has faded. The emotional tightness has loosened. You feel more settled in yourself than you have in a long time. And that is not an accident. It's the result of finally trusting your own awareness. You didn't imagine what you felt. You didn't exaggerate it. You didn't overreact. You sensed something real. And instead of letting it turn you into someone defensive or reactive, you allowed it to mature you. That choice changed you quietly. You are not the same person who first noticed the shift. You are steadier now. Calmer. More anchored. You don't feel the need to revisit the past to prove anything to yourself. You don't need to replay conversations or analyze expressions. You understand that clarity doesn't always come from answers. Sometimes it comes from acceptance. And acceptance is powerful. It allows you to release control without losing dignity. It allows you to move forward without resentment. It allows you to keep your heart open without being unprotected. You realize now that two people close to you were simply part of a lesson. Not a punishment. Not a loss. A lesson in self-trust. A lesson in emotional boundaries. A lesson in knowing when to stay calm instead of seeking certainty from outside yourself. And you learned it. Fully. Completely. You no longer feel pulled to check on what others are doing or saying. Their choices don't define your direction anymore. You feel centered in your own lane. Focused on your own growth. Comfortable in your own rhythm. And that comfort brings confidence. Quiet confidence. The kind that doesn't announce itself. The kind that shows up as peace. You trust your timing now. You trust that what is meant to align with you will do so without confusion. Without mixed signals. Without emotional strain. You are done negotiating with uncertainty. You are done shrinking your intuition to make situations feel easier. You choose clarity now. Even when it's silent. Even when it doesn't come with explanation. You understand that not everything needs to be spoken to be understood. And you respect yourself enough to honor that. As this message reaches its end, notice how your body feels. Notice the calm. Notice the steadiness. That is the sign you needed. Not proof. Not exposure. Not confrontation. Just inner confirmation. You are aligned. You are aware. You are at peace with what you know. And that peace will stay with you. It doesn't disappear when the video ends. It becomes part of how you move. How you choose. How you respond. You don't walk away from this with suspicion. You walk away with discernment. You don't walk away guarded. You walk away grounded. And grounded people don't need to rush. They don't need to chase. They don't need to explain themselves. They simply live in truth. Their truth. If this journey felt real to you, if it felt like it was speaking to something you've been carrying quietly, take a moment now. Like the video. It helps this kind of calm clarity reach others who need it. Comment Amen as a personal affirmation that you are choosing peace over overthinking. Subscribe if you want to continue receiving messages that steady your mind and protect your emotional space. And share this with someone who may be silently questioning themselves. Because reassurance can change everything. And now, you can let this go. Not because it didn't matter, but because it has done its work. You are clear. You are steady. You are free to move forward without looking back. And that is where this truly ends.